Hello, everyone, and welcome to the SPL Rundown, a weekly breakdown of SPL action during the next phase of the SPL. Every week, I'll be joined by our analysts, Lermy Wormy, Frost, and Rathan, to break down the past week's SPL sets, as well as interview a player or coach from the SPL. We hope to have guest analysts in the future, so let us know who you want to see on here. This week, we're talking about Phase 1 playoffs and looking ahead to Phase 2 and the midseason patch. Let's get started with the Phase 1 playoffs, and our first set of the tourney was PK versus Radiance, and PK started off real strong with the Game 1 win, but then the Dodgy comes out, and Adapting comes out, and King Kenneth comes out, and Radiance just seemed to take the rest of the set pretty quickly. What are you guys' thoughts on the first set in the quarters?
Who wants to go first?
Who wants to go first?
I mean, we can just talk about the obvious Dodgy. I mean, Dodgy didn't really get played up until that point very much. He was more like a niche pick. And they picked it second a lot, which I didn't really understand because Dodgy is more like a counter pick. But, if PK are just like, yeah, cool, Dodgy, whatever, the first couple of games, and they're like, it's not going to work out for you. So they pick Hunbots and Artio into it. And I'm like, what's going on here? And then they just lose over and over again. So, I mean, I don't know, man. I think this Dodgy was a really interesting pick. She was very underrated for a lot of what was happening in that kind of meta. It has changed significantly since then to, favor different kinds of junglers. But it was a weird choice up against PK, and PK just didn't respect it.
Yeah, I thought also that the Humbats into Dodgy was just like really, really, really bad. Like, you just go into the powwow as soon as the Humbats comes out, and you're like, you've traded there. Very effectively, I feel like.
Yeah, when it comes to late game team fights, go ahead, Frost.
No. I think, though, it was the perfect storm for Radiance against the Knights. Because you did say she gets picked second as a counter pick. First things that, Knights were picking. Merlin, Hunbots, every time. Merlin, Hunbots, and then, for some odd reason, I can't blame those two too much because I'm going to go with a strong pick every time. But then Neil didn't really do himself a favor picking these supports that were more going to get into the fight because Dodgy just works that way. She needs two engagements. The one that's going to get all your stuff to get thrown out. So you're jumping away, you got your beads, whatever. And then the second engagement where she's going to go in, drag you back in, or kill you. And we hold on. Before that, are we allowed to mention the interview? Or are we going as if we did see the interview?
No, you can mention the interview.
Awesome, because in that interview, Aurora mentioned that he does not play with the other people's comps in mind. We know Zap does that as well. They refuse almost to acknowledge each other. Yeah, he's got a strong Hell, he's got a strong this, but we're going to go in, we're going to do our own thing. If this is true, with neither of them planning for each other, then PK was just at a severe disadvantage having 2-3 top picks that had no way of getting away from Dodgy. They lost the mid 3v3s in the drafts just immediately every match. And the first game didn't go too well for Radiance. Radiance did not play that too hot.
Now remind me, did they get Dodgy in that first game? Radiance?
Yeah,
they did.
We had Dodgy in all of them.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, they had the Dodgy. Cubo Fred popped off. I kind of almost disagree with the idea that like Dodgy is a super counter pick to Hunbats because if you're ulting a Hunbats in the middle of a team fight who's already dumped his ult and wasted his kit, he's pretty worthless at that point. To begin with, all of his abilities are down. His main team fight disruption's down. I mean, it's almost a waste of a Dodgy chain at that point because he's really not going to do anything. I completely agree that having a whole fleet of other characters like Artio and Merlin that don't have CC immune ultimates is a good target for him. But I don't think that it's specifically the Hunbats counter. I think they're both equally effective.
I just mentioned that because I remember watching a bunch of highlights, and it looked like every time the Humbots would ult, Dodgy was going straight into the powwow and trying to re-engage off of PK's engagement, which I thought was a pretty clever idea. And maybe that's not like a complete counter pick, but situationally, it seemed to work well into the Humbats ult.
Dodgy creates panic.
Yeah, go ahead.
Dodgy creates panic. She goes up into that powwow and people just they spread out. A little less in the pro league. They're a little bit more tight on their team fights, but just in general, you see her go up into the air, and it doesn't matter who's dumped what or what person is vulnerable in the other team. You're like, oh god, I gotta pay attention now. It creates doubt and something to think about.
Sure.
Well, it does make the chaos. It's also, we have into our minds, Daji's going to go in, she's going to pull people back in, we're going to do all the damage there. But she herself does a lot of damage. And throughout the entire tournament, whenever you had Daji, the whole point late game is to just go into the Powwow and drop 3 shots into the mage or the jungler, whoever it is that's going to be there, maybe the ADC, just to try and get them out. In the first game, I think Adapting forgot that a little bit. He was splitting chains, trying to get as many beads as possible, and just wasn't doing that much damage. Whereas in the second game after that, he was getting the players without their beads, and then in the game afterwards, he was just sort of focusing chains on one person.
Yeah, the biggest issue in their game 1 comp was definitely the fact that they had, a lot less than they did in their other comps to deal with the beads, because it was basically every single time Adapting was getting those beads, or like they were using it in a direct engagement in like a 1v1 or something. So like the fact of the matter is, when you show up to the fight with the beads still, and then Daji has yet to use the ult, so you throw the Hunbad's ult out, the Daji goes up, and then it's just the damage at that point because they still got the beads, because nobody else on that team comp, like Nike didn't do anything like that. Terra can't really get in there immediately. And like, for instance, you're not really going to pop beads on Terra Root. The only thing that you're going to really pop them on is going to be the walls. And, like, he's good at hitting the walls, but it wasn't as consistent, and it's not on as many targets as you really need to. Whereas in the next couple of games, it was a little bit different. They had a different support, and they had a different soul laner. So they had Benji on the Amaterasu, at least in the second game, which is definitely something that you have to beads as a carry. Because if she's just walking at you with the ultimate, it's really, really hard to get away from that.
As a noob, which I am, I feel like a lot of maybe casual or lower level players feel like Daji is like the ultimate version of Ares jungle. But it seems like you guys are saying like, worry about the damage on those chains because it does a lot. Is there a way to sort of like figure out that the CC is not the best part of the kit there as it relates, like, for like other gods? Like, how do you decide like that the CC isn't the important part, but the damage is?
Those are the rest of your team comp.
That'd be how fast you're killing somebody was almost kind of a blatant thing, especially in ranked, because Roy mentioned that some of the meta does draw out from ranked sometimes. The strength of Daji being, as opposed to an Ares jungle, is her 1, 2, and 3 is basically Loki.
Sure.
And then you have the ult, which is Rom Snipes.
Yeah.
It's just so much blatant damage that you can put out on one person.
All right, people have been going kind of back and forth too about whether or not you should build hydras on Daji, but this is something that Adapting with picking up consistently. And just, it's like what Frost said, it's basically the Loki thing where you pop the 1 on them, you've got the hydras proc, and it doesn't even really matter after that because they're at least 60% HP, and so at that point they've got to be really scared about that.
Sure. Are there any...
Going back to the ultimate in general, sure. If you don't have a lot of CC in your team, if you don't have something that's going to pull the beads out, I mean, it's useless. I mean, for just your casual and rank play, like if you've got, Guardians and Warriors that just don't, or, somebody picks a couple Warriors in the support and soul lane and you just don't have the CC there, then, I mean, you're basically using it for damage, right? You're never going to pull somebody in. They're going to have a Magi's and beads constantly. Nobody else is going to get anything out. And, if anything, you use it as a team fight disruption or deterrent versus like, hey, this is, we're going to make a play off these chains. Unless you absolutely know somebody's vulnerable.
Sure. I guess I never looked at it because obviously I'm a noob, but like, I've never considered the damage on the ultimate, especially from the chains, to be significant. Whereas it looks like it's actually pretty significant, and I need to read my tooltips better.
It does a lot of damage. It does a lot. If you hit all 3 and then you pull them, I think it's got to be close to like 1,200 damage, I think. I don't know.
You got 110 on the base plus 60%. You got 180% scaling. It's absolutely nuts.
That's pretty crazy.
That's a lot of damage.
You get all the ticks, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you get the ticks off the pull.
Sure.
You get at least 1 when you pull them in. So at the very least, they're taking minimum 290 plus 80%.
Well, and I think the other thing is, like, if they beads the first powwow hit, you can still hit them with the other two, right?
Yep.
And even if it doesn't pull, like, you're still getting that damage in.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Couple that with the ROM pick that Cyclone loves so much, because that's how he engages in his team fights. He'd go straight up into the air, put the mid down to about 50% health, and then you can't really stick around. You don't have to be dead. I think that's a very common misconception a lot of players make. You don't actually have to kill somebody to win these fights. They just can't stick around.
Yeah, if you poke them out enough, then you sort of win the fight by default because it becomes a 4v5 or something.
Yeah, I play with a lot of beginners, and that one's really hard to get across to people is, look, they've got 100 HP left. They're not coming back. They have to back. Don't chase them all the way out and lose the rest of the team fight for it. And, Frost is right, especially, as we saw in later matches where the Terra was running a Soul Reaver. She'd blink in, alt Cyclone to go up into the air and just pop somebody with 3 shots and basically take them out.
Yeah.
To the point where they have to leave. So, yeah.
Especially for this meta. The last thing about this, I'm focusing a lot on the Daji just because he did bring it out for the whole tournament, just phase 1.
And we'll probably continue to talk about it as we look on to the other games. Okay. Moving on then to our second game of the quarterfinals, which was Ghost versus Renegades. And this game stood out to me as the sub game. Like Solar Troll wasn't playing in this game, and neither was Captain Twig. So I'm going to start off with that. Do you think the subs made a difference or not? Would the outcome have been different if we had both Twig and Solo, or one of the two? What are your thoughts on the subs and how they affected this set in particular?
I mean, I've got the SEC bias where I see Baskin's name played on a team, and that's just an easy dub for them. It's unfortunate because Ro is a good player in his own right, but I mean, it's Baskin, what can you say?
Ro's just not a winning condition compared to Baskin. He ran those games.
You could argue that the Baskin trade out was an upgrade. Like, I like Twig. I think he's a good player. Baskin has consistently performed as one of the best players in every role that he's ever played in for the entire time he's been playing Smite. Twig's good. Twig was struggling earlier in the year, I want to say. But I
think that was to be expected, though, a little bit.
I see it as an upgrade more than almost.
I mean, Twig struggles in the early on. I think everyone sort of expects, like, if you switch roles, they're going to be some rough waters ahead. But I think a lot of I don't know. I watched the Ghost. They put out a little documentary recently, and they all feel very confident in Twig and his ability, which, of course, that's what they're going to say on these videos. Do you think the Renegades can still compete with these sorts of teams in LAN environments like we saw here? I know it was a pretty quick game, a quick set, that is. It only went 3 games, if I remember correctly. But
yes.
Do you think...
I think they can. I have full faith in them. I think they've proved at least a couple times throughout the first split that they can execute at the highest level when they want to. And usually when you see, like, I'll call them bottom tier teams, but usually when you see bottom tier teams win, it is less about them playing well, and it's more about them capitalizing on really dumb mistakes that higher tier teams make. And I don't see that as the case with a few of the Renegades wins. I can't remember them off the top of my head, but it never seemed like, can't remember who they beat, but it never seemed like the teams they played, had a bad day. It was, they played well as a team. They executed on their strategy. Jake came out guns blazing with the Horus and just slapped the holy hell out of people. Versus, like, you kind of look at some of the Obey wins and you're like, well, were they playing well or were the other teams playing poorly? And I have some words on that later, but I think, if I think Solar Troll is an extremely mechanically talented player. He's very good at the game. Ro is very good too. Ro has won SPL games before where he's had to sub in, but short notice asking him to come and play with basically a god puddle.
Yeah.
Where the other team's trading out for Baskin.
Yeah.
I think this went pretty much predictably, but I don't think it's a reflection on them as a team when they are playing at full strength at all. Actually, I mean, I almost ignored that set because it's just not representative of them and their ability to execute, in my opinion.
Sure. Do you guys have any other thoughts, Frost or Lermy?
That is basically it. It kind of was just said and done in the team selection.
It was done on Twitter when they made that announcement. It was over.
Come keep asking for all the games.
Shit.
Moving on, I guess, to Radiance versus Sanguine, and something interesting happened here where Sanguine was able to choose their opponent due to the extenuating circumstances of COVID-19 and the way that this quote-unquote LAN was handled. Do you think this choosing dynamic, had a lot to do with the outcome at all? I know Aurora said he thought Ghost, was a bit scared of Sanguine and that they had been scrimming together a little bit, and he felt that Sanguine was starting to take some of Ghost's strategies and playstyle a little bit and incorporate it into their own. So what do you think about the choosing dynamic that happened? Because this is something new and we haven't really seen this in the SPL before. And also, what do you think about Sanguine? They're rookies and they were the first seed in this tournament. So go for those.
No, I've still not decided how I feel about the pick your poison kind of format. I don't know. It was strange to hear that first seed gets to pick, but then that sort of gives you something else to shoot for. And I do like it's almost banterous in a way. Mm-hmm. Who do you think is a free pass into a final? Mm-hmm. Or if it's something personal, who will take you out at quarters? I don't know. Mm-hmm. I think
I agree with Ross there. I like the kind of idea of just, picking which one is the freer fight. And unfortunately for Sanguine, it didn't work out for them in that way. But honestly, looking at the quarters performances, I think I would have picked the same. I think that they just didn't really come in with a game plan to deal with it. And it just felt like Radiance, outperformed them in every measure of it. And I mean, they came in with strategies, obviously, but, Sanguine are the rookies. They haven't had as much time to deal with these kind of SPL level strategies, especially from an even playing field in terms of connection, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I completely agree there. I mean, I think even if you look at the finals, right, Radiance versus Ghost, which one is the technically easier team? Mm-hmm. Obviously, Ghost outshined Radiance. So, which one do you think is gonna, as Frost said, which ones do you think is gonna give you an easier time getting into the finals? And they picked. Would it have been different had they played against Ghost? Who knows? But I think up until that point in the season, Radiance had kind of been underperforming, right? I mean, they typically middle of the pack team.
I would say the second half of phase one was a little bit disappointing for them. There were some losses that didn't look particularly good. There are definitely good losses in the SPL. But these losses were looking a little shaky. So
I think the entire playoffs, they kind of woke up, right? I mean, they came to play finally, right? I mean, the last 3 weeks, especially of the regular season, they were terrible. Mm-hmm. So if you're Sanguine watching that, maybe you see a couple glimmers of hope out of them versus Ghost, who's been strong all year. Which one are you picking to go up against? Of course, it's going to be Radiance.
Absolutely.
Didn't work out for him, but
especially in this meta and Sanguine's playstyle, where it's hold out until about the mid to late and then capitalize on a mistake. I'm going to go for the sloppier team. And on record, it's definitely Radiance. Some of the, that initial game, Sanguine versus Ghost, where they actually took it all the way, super late game, I don't think they could have overcome something like that. I think Radiance went toe-to-toe with Ghost. I don't think Sanguine could have got there.
Okay. Speaking a little bit more about Sanguine, what are you guys' thoughts? These guys are rookies to the league. They come in, they get the first seed for the Phase 1 playoffs. Basically, they're on top of the league at this point as rookies. I don't know if we've ever seen a team this sort of new. I know they're not entirely new to the scene, but this new to the SPL doing this well. What are your thoughts on the rookies doing this well so far?
Go ahead.
I was going to say, personally, I think, first of all, I'm glad to see, because after all of the crap that was talked about them is not a good team, and everybody ignores the fact that these guys basically live with each other to play online and get better for a whole year. Mm-hmm. WoW is basically like a Challenger Cup team, which is an insane commitment in its own right. To see them come out and swing was really cool. I think the first couple of games, everybody underestimated them. And I think the games after that, they started taking them seriously and realized it was too late. My opinion on them as a team, I think they're kind of like meta slaves, if that makes sense. Like they're extremely good at executing whatever is like the meta, right? They don't seem to be very creative. They don't step outside of a very narrow box. You're never going to see Tom Pickett Daji, right? Or anything like that. Like they're just going to play the top tier gods every single time. And I actually think that coming out of these midseason changes where they're going to have the least amount of time to prepare for their games, relative to the meta change. And there's going to be another obvious change when they do a bonus balance. I think they're going to struggle coming out the first couple of weeks. I think until it shakes out and they really have a good understanding of what the meta is after these big shifts, I think they're going to have problems.
I do think that these guys have a love of Smite that's kind of unfounded in the scene. They play Smite literally 24/7. I've never seen any pro players play as much as them. They're constantly grinding ranked. They're in all of my casuals. Anytime I queue up at like 3 a.m. just to play one game. Oh, there's Panatum on the other team, or there's Shinto. Like, I didn't want to get into these queues.
When I was grinding duel to get to Masters, I think I ran into Panatom like 3 times. Each time on a Mulan or Athena or something stupid, but he was always there.
I think that just complete love of the game and just their ability to be so synergistic with each other, because like Ray said, they have been playing together for a very long time. They love each other. They are great teammates through and through. I think that passion can definitely push them far, but the issue is, they do have a lot of knowledge, but they've got to act on it. They've got to come up with their own game plans, because like you said, they're kind of just sticking to one note comps. They're not really adventuring out. And of course, we're not in the scrim, so we can't see, have they tried other stuff. But from what we've seen in the SPL and competitions beyond that, I think we just need to see them reach a little bit more to get to that full potential.
All right, that sounds good. Let's move on to Ghost versus SSG. And I think a lot of people, myself included, were thinking SSG might be a favorites to get to the finals here. And Ghost gave them a run for their money and then took it from them pretty quickly, I'll add, in 3 sets. So what are your thoughts on this Ghost versus Renegades set?
SSG.
Oh, my bad. SSG. I'm getting confused now, too.
Dang it. I've done it now.
I think SSG dropped the ball.
Yeah.
I don't think Ghost played particularly well. I mean, they just did what they were supposed to. It wasn't anything crazy. They didn't capitalize. I mean, they capitalized on their mistakes, but it wasn't like, some earth-shattering strat they had to pull out. They just had to play Smite, and SSG through every single one of those games.
I also just think that, I think Cherio is a very good mind when it comes to Smite. He picks a lot of really unconventional stuff, but Erlang Shen's not it. That's just it. That's the whole statement. I hate that character. I don't think he's very good right now. And, I love the signature Kali. I think that's a great pick, especially if you're building a comp around it. But he played Erlang Shen twice in this set, and boy, oh boy, it did not look good the first time. I don't understand going back to it a second time.
I still like Erlang. Also, I did get to see this set, so.
I think SSG are even more adamant about their play style as opposed to Sanguine. The only difference is that they play things that they're very comfortable with. You got like Hera, and you do have the Erlang, the Kali, which also assist in that predictability. And I think they were just kind of undone by, this is what you like to play, so we're going to play against it. Even though no team will admit, it's almost like a sign of too much respect. Yeah, I did my homework. I knew you were going to play this character, and then I just built around that. No one's going to admit to it.
Mm-hmm. I know this SSG squad is pretty similar to the Renegade squad of last. It's exactly the same, except for vote. And the Renegade squad of last year was really the one who tried to counter the invade meta that was creeping on in the middle of the season. And in my opinion, they like to play games a little bit slowly, which kind of contrasts to the fast-paced way that Ghost likes to get into their games and, build leads quickly and push leads, until the end. Do you think that these sort of play styles competing against each other showed that it's better to focus on the early game, for lack of a better way of phrasing it? Like, not that SSG don't focus on the early game, but I think they're a little more willing to give up things early and look for fights late to win late.
I think it's kind of a two-pronged sword because Sherry really likes to play these late game characters, and they're really just trying to focus on him. I think I really like his style of being the facilitative jungle over the carry, but their comp just doesn't really work to that extent. Of course, Dardas is a sick player, but he's not going to be the hard carry. Vote is a great player as well, but he's not going to be the hard carry. So they're like kind of mixing and matching these styles between, okay, we realize that these two players are not going to be it. Cherio, go do it. And of course, Cherio tries his best, but his team is not on that same wavelength.
So would you say that they just don't have many win conditions outside of Cherry?
Yeah, I would say that's kind of it. I think that, Nika getting big is really their win condition too, because Nika consistently plays the solo lane very, very well. He is probably one of the strongest solos in the league, I'd argue. But the fact of the matter is they just have, between these players, their preferred play styles don't necessarily mesh with each other. And that's kind of their biggest issue.
There's the meshing, and then the lack of other players that'll be able to step forward. We saw that Nuwa pick into the Kali. We saw that the whole plan was Cherry's going to dive us. We're going to get him low. We're going to ignore him after that, and then Nuwa to finish it off. That's it. No trade. You're not getting your heal. You're not getting anything for it. That's got to be homework. Well, it could also be coincidence because Twig has pulled out Nuwa. We joke it's the only way to keep him from dashing in, but...
Yeah, I mean, Nuwa has been an SCC pick for a very long time in terms of just getting picked up by people like Zeros and like Baskin. These guys were picking it before all this happened and before, there were some changes up in the jungle. So I think that, just taking a look at the performance, especially from the Splint 1 SCC LAN, Baskin continuously pulled out this Nuwa, and I think she's incredibly underrated for a long period of time. She's now finally kind of getting that recognition, like, oh wait, this character does damage, and being able to run away, like go up in the sky and then counter, Kali ultimate, or even, running away from Bakasura is really, really going to be important coming up into these next couple of weeks, and especially if this meta kind of stays the way it is for a little bit. I don't know. I think that she was definitely a little bit underrated at this point, at least in the SPL. And so Twig brings it out, and then, oh wait, Nuwa works really good into Kali. What do we do?
Erlang. Okay.
I guess Erlang was the answer. Last week, I had the opportunity to interview Aurora. Please check it out. Hey, so I'm sitting here with Aurora, and we're going to talk about the Phase 1 playoffs and, looking forward to Phase 2, and maybe we'll ask some more questions after that. I got a lot of questions from one of our great analysts, Frost, and so, maybe we'll just get started. How do you think the Phase 1 playoffs went from your guys' perspective? Do you guys think I know the outcome wasn't entirely what you wanted, but overall, did you guys feel like you showed up pretty good?
Yeah, I felt like we showed up pretty good. I mean, going into it, we were fifth seed, I think. I don't remember now. Were we fifth seed?
I think so. I think it was on the
fifth or fourth seed. I don't remember, but we were like five. I think we were 500. We were either like 8-6 or 7-7. I don't remember our record.
Yeah, something like that.
But a lot of people were really too high on us, which makes sense because we kind of played bad the second half of the phase. We came out pretty strong. We won like 4 in a row, and then we lost a couple. And we brought it back at the end just in time. And then we all felt pretty confident going to playoffs still. We all know that we're good, so we weren't really worried. And we knew once it got to the best of 5 sets, it would help our team, especially. And I was looking for that as well. And we just prepared and we went in there and we did pretty well, I feel like.
Okay,
the finals were crazy, but
it was crazy. I mean, probably one of the best sets that we've seen in a while. So when you're like preparing for things like this, I mean, like you guys, I would say you had a deep run. You make it to the finals after kind of I don't want to say floundering because I love you, Aurora, but it was a little bit shaky there at the end of the season. With I don't know. I saw some of the tier lists, man, and Cyclone Spin 8th on the ADC tier list and things like that. I don't want to give a lot of credit or credence to those.
People were like memeing or something.
I think there was a little bit of memeing too, but like, how do you like you were losing games, right? Which is what was happening. So how do you sort of like mentally get right to set up for a run like this to go deep in a tournament?
Yeah, we're just still trying to figure things out. Like during the regular split, we didn't have it like all. We didn't have everything set up how we wanted to and how we wanted to do things. And we honestly, by the end of playoffs, we really still didn't have it set up all the way. But we were getting on the right track, and that's why we started playing better and we started improving, and that's why we were ramping up throughout the entire tournament. I felt like we got better and better with each set, and then we even played pretty well in the finals because. Like in the finals, I feel like I almost called them rival. If I call them rival,
that's fine.
My bad.
I called them rival in my little notes document here, so they can't escape from that just yet.
Against Ghost, like I felt like we played okay, but I was like some of the games they definitely I feel like they could have just took them, but we fought back pretty well, and I feel like if we didn't improve as much as we did throughout the tournament, we probably would have not been able to push them to 5 games. So I think we got on the right track, and as long as we get back on the right track and stay on that next split, I think we'll be a lot better than what we were towards the end of the second or the first half of the second phase of that.
Now that we sort of started talking about it, before we dive into the games, because I got some game-specific questions from some of the analysts, I just got to mention, like, Daji, where did that come from? I guess that seems to be like, at least seems to me, where the story sort of started with you guys in terms of like winning games and winning sets was adapting on this Daji. Is that just something you guys like had in the tank for a while, or like tell me where that came from in terms of getting ready for this LAN, so to speak?
Yeah, we were just playing it in scrims, and it was just something that we knew was a pretty good pick, and then we just decided to play it a lot leading up into the tournament. It was going well, so we just picked it.
So like
the tournament, that's basically about it.
When you say like you were playing it in scrims, was this like something that other teams had seen in scrims that just wasn't really showing up in the SPL games? Like I don't think Adapting played it too many times during the phase, maybe once or twice, if I remember correctly. So I don't know.
I didn't even play it at all.
Yeah, so it seemed kind of out of the blue, which is like, was this just like in the scrims leading up to the playoffs, or was this sort of you saw that this had success earlier on, and you're like, all right, now's the time to pull it out?
I don't remember exactly, but I think around then, and then maybe a little bit before as well, like maybe the last couple of weeks of SPL, possibly. But I can't remember off the top of my head. But it was more towards the end for sure.
Okay. All right. Well, let's I guess get into talking about the 3 games that happened at playoffs. The first one against PK. Game 1, PK sort of did their own thing, but then you guys basically ran the set. I just want to know, is there like anything specific you like planned for PK in terms of like picks and bans? Like Frost had a lot of questions about Hell and like using Hell or picking and banning around Hell, especially with such a strong Hell player on the other team. So I don't know, just so talk a little bit about how you were prepping for like the picks and bans or even PK in general. Like what are the things that you might have noticed that to give you a bit of an advantage or something like that?
Yeah, we basically just looked at what they played during the split, and then we really like for the history of what I like to do, like prepping most of the time. I don't really care what the other team does. I just care what we're doing and like how we're gonna execute it and what we need to do and what we need to pick to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And we just looked at what they were playing. Like Paul's a really strong Hell player, so we wanted to take that away from him. And I can't remember what our other bans were off the top of my head right now. But I think we banned other mid laners as well too, just to be targeted at Paul a little bit. If I remember right. and then we just had our plan. I felt like actually like going back to that first game. I don't know if I'm getting it mixed up with our SPL game. I don't think I am, but I felt like we had a good early game, and then we kind of like lost it in the mid game, and then PK took a lead, and then they just ran with it and beat us in the first game. And I think, yeah, I remember after the game we're like, "Yo, it's fine. We did what we wanted to do, and it worked. We just need to not let go of it." And
Sure.
we didn't let go in the last 3 games against them, and we were
Yep.
able to just take them out after that. We just were able to execute what we wanted to do a lot better.
Moving on to Sanguine. Sanguine, man, first seed. It's kind of crazy considering 2 years ago my boys were not even in the SML. So I don't know what a come up. What are your thoughts on the Sanguine boys and them coming up, and then like rookies, man, becoming first seed basically?
Yeah, no, they had a really good split. I'm happy for them. They've been playing and grinding a lot of Smite for like the past 2 years, maybe a little bit more than that, and they've all been on the same team for a while. And I think that's really cool that they were able to like make it an SPL with that group and do as well as they did. So I gotta give them a lot of credit.
Now that we've like seen them a little bit, what were your honest expectations? Going in to the start of this split.
At the start of the split, I thought they were gonna do really well because we were scrimming them, and they were the team that was giving us like the most trouble like early on in scrims. Like, I think we had a positive win rate against all the other teams that we scrimmed against at the beginning,
except for Sanguine.
Except for Sanguine, and they had a positive win rate against us.
Oh man, okay.
So we were getting a lot out of the scrims, playing against them. So I thought they were going to do really well, like going into the split. I thought they were going to be one of the best teams, and they ended up being the best team during the regular season.
Yeah, I don't know. I was genuinely surprised. Like, it's one thing. I don't know. I feel a little more attached to this team than others because they played in my first tournament that I ever hosted, and they won it. So, like to see them go from like a little pro-am tournament to making the SML to now like SPL. I'm feeling pretty good about that. But like I don't know, it genuinely surprised me. Like I thought they would probably be around like the 6th seed just because like with the contraction that happened, like the concentration of talent on these teams is just so high. Like every team is stacked, and it feels like every week any of these teams could bring out something new. Like Sino comes in and just like runs the league for like 2-3 weeks basically because like I mean props to Sino, he's a beast, like, and that's what a world champion and an MVP can do for your team. So like that amount of parity in the league is I don't think it was expected, and I don't think even I expected like Sanguine to be up to that level of parity in the league. So I don't know, I just wanted to sort of get your take on it.
Yeah, no, individually they're all really good players. And yeah, Saito coming into the league, he really got Obey back on track.
I mean, that was Phase 1's been one of the best for storylines as far as I can tell. I mean, like it was a really interesting sort of first phase. The script couldn't have been better as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. It could have been a little better.
Well, sure. From a fan perspective, I think though, like a lot of the games are really competitive.
No, for sure, it was good.
I was just gonna ask a couple of questions that Frost had here, especially about the Hercules. Is there like I know you love Herc, and like that might be your favorite god in the game. I don't want to speak for you, it might be though. But like both you and Mike seem to really love Herc support, especially in competitive. And is there a reason why you guys both value it so much, and like do you feel that there's like a rivalry between you and Mike about like having the best Herc in the league or things like that, or do you feel that way about any of the other supports in terms of like, because I know Neil plays Herc every now and then and did a lot last year, so I don't know, just talk about Hercules as it relates to being your signature pick a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think there's really a rivalry between me and Mike with it. I think Mike though in that set had a way better performance of like all his Herc games.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I played okay. I didn't play terrible on it, but I didn't play great. Mike had some really good Herc games. Even the games that he lost, he did a lot of work, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I could have, if I had a better Hurt game in game 5, we probably could have won. I like missed some abilities. There was that one tragic driving strike I missed at the end of the game on Twig that maybe could have won us the set if I hit it. But what ended up happening is I pulled Twig with my 2, and I just sold my Travelers, which gave me MP5. So I didn't have enough mana to push him while he was in the air. So
unfortunate.
he fell. And my mana bar ticked back up, and I accidentally pushed it when I didn't want to, so I just completely missed him. And then he lived, and then they ended up killing all of us because of it. So I mean, I made a couple mistakes in that last game, which maybe could have won us the game. But no, I think Mike's really good at it. Mike's definitely had the better Herc out of us two this first half of the year. But we'll see. Who knows what happens next half?
Yeah,
I still think my Herc was pretty good this.
I think
this
it was.
year.
I think it was good early on in the season, especially. You were running some games with it. Is there a reason why you and even like other teams are valuing Hercules so much? Like, I know it's just a pick that you like, but is there a more I don't know, like nerdy reason that you that he's good? Like, does he just do a lot of damage? He gets around the map. You know, he presses W really well.
No, I just like him. I just like him a lot. He's just fun to play.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know. That's all the questions I have. Do you have anything else you want to talk about? Any shout outs you might want to give? I don't know. Floor is yours.
Yeah, no, shout outs to you guys for having me on for the first episode. It's an honor.
Appreciate it.
Shout outs to Radiance for coming in and picking us up after the craziness of
the whole ghost
that happened. I don't know what I'm allowed to say. I don't know what I'm not allowed to say, so I don't even want to get started on all that. But man, shout outs to them for coming in and picking this up. They've been great to work with. I couldn't ask for a better org. Thanks to like all their sponsors, Logitech, Tetsups, and thank you.
Okay.
Zowie. So shout outs to all of them. And then shout outs to my family for being supportive this year. I mean, I feel like everybody's going through a hard time with everything that's going on in the world. There's multiple things too. It's just not one thing.
Yep.
So they've been a great support system for me. I really appreciate that. And just shout outs to all the fans of the SPL and to my teammates. Like, it's been with everything going on, we're still kicking, we're still fighting, we're still in there. Smite still goes on.
It's still going on. Hey, it's going on. Going on better than ever, as far as I can tell. I think the SPL is looking real good for the next phase. So, yeah. And shout outs to High too. What, like, send me a jersey, my friend.
Yeah, no, he's been great. He's been loving it. It's funny. I was playing a little bit of Smite with him, and he thinks it's a lot of fun. So I'm glad he got into it. It's cool having somebody like that in the Smite scene. It's always a lot of fun seeing people try it out for the first time and really get into it. So it's been exciting.
All right. Thanks a lot, man. I really appreciate you joining me for this interview. Moving on to the finals, which was actually the best set I think I've seen in maybe all of phase 1. I mean, a big five game set here, going back and forth. Nike winning all the time. Herc being pulled around in the picks and bans. What are you guys' first thoughts on Ghost vs. Radiance? How do you guys feel about that?
That was just a really, really, really good set to watch.
Yeah.
Just period. I mean, who doesn't want to watch a best of 5 go to literally all 5 games between two very strong teams?
And the last match is over an hour long.
Yep.
My heart was going to give out.
Yeah, it was. I was looking at the stats. It was over 300,000 combined gold between the two teams.
Oh man.
Yeah, it was. Actually, Ghost won with 20K less than Radiance, which I mean doesn't mean much at that point. But that was some of the. I did get to see the final set, and that was some of the best Smite I've ever got to watch. I have been to Worlds finals. Those are hard to beat. But from an online viewing perspective, I think that might have been the best set I've ever seen, for sure. You know, it it was almost to the point where it sucks that somebody had to win and somebody had to lose because both teams just played absolutely out of their freaking brains. Interestingly enough, Heimdall lost a whole bunch up until that final game where Panda Cat just went ape mode and destroyed everybody.
It was that build, man.
Yeah, I know. Who came up with that? Frost. You know any theory crafters we can chat with? But no, I thought it was a great set all around. I think everybody played extremely well. I don't think anybody dropped the ball. I think it was just, I mean, that was a true set of inches, right? Where just all the little things added up to each team winning individually, and Ghost finally pulled it out at the end, and that was that was an insane set. I don't think there's anything else to say about it. For me. I mean, I'm sure everybody else will, but
I think when we're talking like back and forth, I mean, you talked about before, Frost, how Ghost is just so adaptive and like how they choose to play. And they knew adapting was going to come out with this Daji. I mean, they saw it, all 3 games in the semis or something like that. So the fact of the matter is, they basically put adapting down in that last game. He died like 13 times or something by the end of the game. And like just the fact of the mid-set transition to really understand how they needed to decompose the roster of Radiants going into the end of that game was really, really good by them.
Frost?
I'm trying to remember a few of the key things during that last game. To me, it felt like they both came at each other right out the gate, eye to eye. I don't think anyone was too desperate to make a move yet. See how it played out. PBM starting off with the Hercules just to sort of see what it was that Aurora was going to dish out. Aurora comes out with a Bacchus, and he's not having an easy time in the early bit. Then he goes into the mid, through the late, and that's more or less where a lot of the real fighting was starting to happen. I feel like that set the pace. That first game, Aurora and PBM just found, okay, we have to facilitate ourselves into the mid and through the late, depending on what it is that we pick. It's almost like while they're all playing this MOBA that the rest of us are playing, they're in each other's heads throughout the entire ordeal. And they were probably super fatigued by the end. And I think it just ended up being like a battle of wits and sheer tenacity trying to get to the end. Like
it was a war of attrition.
It was such a crazy finals for me. Like you said, I've seen Worlds finals, and they tend to be a little anticlimactic sometimes. 3-1s, 3-2s are kind of fun, but it feels like at the 5th one, they run out of steam. But this one had such insane pacing, my heart was going to drop out by the 5th game.
Yep.
I can imagine that fatigue just was literally insane. By the time they get to the last game, all right, boys, let's just make it a quick one. We're going to stomp them. Oh, just kidding. It's 60 minutes long. They had to have been just mentally out of it by the end of that. And honestly, I can't blame them. But that set just in general, I mean, props to both those teams because like we've been saying, either of them could have taken that set. And it just came down to who played really the last couple of minutes better than the other team.
All right. Any other things to talk about with the Ghost and Radiance finals?
Ghost and Radiance finals. It's just
I wish I could watch a set like that every week.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could handle it. Like for my health, I don't know.
Comes with a side of blood pressure medication.
All right. Well, now that we've finished with Phase 1 playoffs, the next thing that's coming up here is a huge midseason patch. A lot of changes to the map, a lot of changes to items, a lot of changes to gods. What are the things in the midseason patch that are most interesting to you guys and you think that will have the most impact in terms of SPL? This is a question that I really wanted Aurora to answer, but he was stonewalling me so hard. So let me know what you got.
I too have not scrimmed on this patch, so I might not know.
Sure.
I think one way that we can kind of take a look at this, it's not exactly the same, but the SEC playoffs just happened, and it's kind of in a very similar meta to what it's going to be now. There are a lot of jungle and item changes that are
Hold on,
going to
before
change
you
it up.
start, was SEC played on the midseason patch?
No, it was the one right before it. But
Sure.
the thing about that is that Golden Blade was still kind of, very, very strong. And now that we got Serrated Blade, it's going to be even more amplified that Golden Blade junglers are going to be in there. So even just looking back at the SEC finals from last week, Mollusk was slamming the Amaterasu, and that's a big thing in rank to be building the Amaterasu jungle with the Golden Blade and going into all these different things. So I think the Golden Blade opens up a lot of opportunities for more, different weird junglers to come out. Like Arachne is now meta all of a sudden. Like I just want to see someone play Arachne. That's going to be amazing.
God, no. She's already meta in rank for a very long time because she pub stomps, easy carries you to Diamond Masters, but to go all the way to the SPL, I'd sooner see a Loki, please, not Arachne.
No, she's always been good. She's always been like low 60% win rate, like top 10 win rate god across all ranks and levels and everything like that. Like when you look at the stats, and I know everybody and their mother says, well, the win rate doesn't matter, but 60% plus for a god is very telling. The one thing I'll say about this midseason patch is everybody needs to chill out about their predictions, because when you have a major swing in meta, usually there is a major correction that follows it. It's happened every 6 months for the last 4 years that I've been playing, or 5 years I've been playing. Is every time there's a major swing, whether it's a map change or it's a midseason patch or anything like that, there is always within the next 4 weeks a major shift in some direction, because everybody bitches to high hell. Hecate is not going to stay at its current state. Golden Blade is not going to stay in its current state. So all this theory crafting that we're going to do over the next however many minutes could be completely irrelevant come Tuesday, 2 weeks from now when they do a bonus balance.
Sure.
Because it's pretty obvious that there's stuff that just cannot fly. And until we see how far they adjust it, and they are aware of it. They're aware everybody hates Hecate. They're aware everybody hates the Golden Blade meta, because you're building it on ability-based assassins just to get the farm ahead, so you don't have to dump mana on jungle camps, right? So they're aware that that's a problem. So, do I think that Arachne's still going to be strong afterwards? Yes, I think she'll still be a ranked pub stomper. I don't think she's going to make it in the SPL like Frost said, but I really think that, especially at this point, it's hard to draw theories out about how this is going to look when they're still figuring out, from a Titan Forge perspective, how this meta meet what their objectives were with the midseason patch.
Sure.
If that makes sense.
I totally understand. You have any thoughts, Frost?
I think this midseason patch is going to reflect pretty much every season of Smite. You're going to have, let's see, I'm going to write on my notepad here. You're going to have the middle crew. This is going to be mid-tier teams. For now, I'll just use Sanguine, who goes for a very solid, very consistent draft. Nothing crazy. I think they're going to be about mid-tier. And then you're going to have one of two things coming out. Who's good at experimenting? This is where I think Radiance is going to come out. That's why they were so hot at the start of the season, is that they can just go in and find the most smork W key stuff to play. So you got teams like Radiance at the top. Ghost is probably going to end up somewhere there as well. And then who's a little slower to really come into much of any meta, or is just hesitant in general to practice newer things? That's Obey Renegades. I wouldn't say they're hesitant to practice. They're just very adamant about setting their own metas all the time.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's okay, this is what we're dealing with now. Let's go to the complete opposite side of it. Let's see what we can find over here. And then, as you said, there's going to be that overcorrection, and that's when it's going to stabilize. The first few games, I don't really think they're going to be telling of how the rest of the phase is going to go.
Okay.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, Frost.
Yeah, I definitely can agree. I think this jungle change and things like that, where the minions are going to have aggro and things like that, I can see that really having a bigger effect than it would in ranked in the SPL, just because, it really can come down to that very small minutia of, oh, my ADC accidentally tanked the Alpha Harpy, and now they've got 30% less attack speed coming into this, and they just, they didn't register it because they haven't practiced with it enough, or, the little tiny details that have been changed in the jungle, I feel like they could make a pretty big impact for teams that, aren't really processing it. And for teams that are, like, seeing the debuff around someone means, okay, let's go. Or, seeing that in duo lane, like, this support does or has the aura around them that makes them invisible to minions or things of that nature. There are a lot of little small things that teams are going to have to start to pick up on, or they're going to be really confused as to why they're losing a lot in the early game.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, just to Frost's earlier point, I actually think the first couple of weeks are going to be interesting, especially if the bonus balance changes are relatively perceived as minor. Because what you're going to see is like 3 to 4 weeks before the major changes come in, where, the team that does the best job of adapting to this craziness is going to take a couple of games and get out an early lead in the split. The ability to adapt early is going to lead to your standings at the end, which leads to seeding, which leads to being able to pick your opponent or what have you. Right. So I think, the first couple of weeks could actually end up being important with how they adapt to the meta, even though it's obviously going to change pretty significantly. Like, auto attack based gods are the best right now. Mage ADCs are annoying as hell. Everybody's got 80% pen. Tanks feel useless. Like, everything is shaken up to the point where, you can get a solid mid-split lead, or at least early split lead in the standings if you're just good at adapting to this. And I think that's what we're going to see. I think we're going to see a lot of people try a lot of different stuff.
I think they should, especially with, say, new purple buff. First one to touch it. Now you take, you have less physical protections, 30% more physical damage, something like that, but the minions go on you less. Okay, then the compositions on the other team, if you're now more susceptible to physical damage, I'm not going to have a mage ADC, maybe not even a guardian. I'm just going to put 2 physicals there and run you down. Something in that way, shape, or form. But it does depend on how much of a lead they're going to get. I don't see too many teams keeping up a lead beyond, say, 4 games, 4 matches. And this is a triple round robin.
Yeah, they boosted up the schedule for phase 2. It's now going to be 14 weeks long.
Right.
So how do you guys feel the phase is going to go overall? Like, what do you think is going to be the best team, the worst teams? Like, what are your thoughts on phase 2 in general? And who do you think is going to have the best seed going into Worlds? I know it's way too early to ask these questions, but I'm asking you anyway. So what do you got?
You don't want to hear from me. I'm a big underdog fan.
Who do you think is going to be the underdog then?
Yeah. Like, what's the script? What's Hindu Man's script right then? Give us the script.
I think the Renegades end top 3.
Ooh, okay.
I see.
That is
fancy.
Now,
I could see that. I could, just because Jake loves non-traditional supports. And right now is the best time for them to shine. Solo support is way better now. All right. We've gone too far, but in actuality, Warriors in the support. Whereas I wouldn't get an Assassins, it's almost like season 1 where you had this choice of, I'm going to go Guardian's Blessing or, well, Watchers back then, or I'm going to get the new Warrior's Blessing and just completely push you out. I won't get a lead, but if I can keep you behind, it's almost the same thing as me keeping up with you with the Guardians.
Sure. What about you, Lermy? Any spicy picks for the phase?
It's going to be tough. I think that, like Frost said way earlier, the team that can adapt to these changes the best is going to really succeed, and Ghost is definitely up there. Radiance likes to experiment, so I think those two will kind of maintain their top 2 or 3 spot. I think we could really be surprised. I mean, Renegades, like Ray said, does come out and pull the weird stuff too, because Jake just likes to experiment. So I think experimentation will really be rewarded. I think the people that, theory craft and big brain this will really be able to come out on top this split.
Frost, any last thoughts?
It's the most odd thing. This is why I always vote like week by week, day of, because it goes in different. The phase is gonna go in different phases. Where at the start it is gonna be who experiments and does well, who decides to kind of opt out from experimentation, and who experiments and just is way off the mark. Then after that, you get The mid bit, I think, is the most exciting for me. This is when they've all sort of come into it. We kind of know what we're going for. We kind of know who's comfortable on what. That's when we get those sort of playoff type games.
Mm-hmm.
And then the latter bit, that really is it's gonna depend on the standings.
Yeah.
I know everyone likes to say that they play their best all the time, but if you're guaranteed first seed, you're probably not playing nearly as hard. Or if you're not even gonna make it, you've got nothing to prove. I don't know.
Unless you're playing spoiler, right?
Yeah, that too.
Yeah,
I think it needs a lot of context for what it's going to be.
This is gonna be a horribly unpopular opinion, and I will get roasted whatever comment section this video has. But I think Obey will surprise people. I don't necessarily think they're going to be like a number 1 or maybe even number 3 team.
Oops.
But I truly think with Sino, he's going to be moving down. I think, each one of those players is, Bobby's obviously a question mark to everybody, but with each of those players being fairly good in their own right, Ducky's, I think he's the best player on their team. I think they're going to surprise people. I don't know where that puts them in the standings, but I wouldn't count them out just yet, in my opinion.
It's more of a gauging thing. I have, for this phase, I have high hopes for Obey, especially seeing as how Bobby goes. I mentioned I gauge a player on this is how well you're doing. This is how well I think you could be doing based on the characteristics that you've shown in your games. Bobby's got the head for a support.
No, he does.
He's
Bobby's a student of the game.
Yeah, especially when he went up against Knights. And the Knights, I don't know if they were trying to break him. This was exciting. It almost felt like it was a 5v1, and it was just all in the head. They being Knights, kept getting the Fire Giant so low and kept resetting it. Kept getting it low and resetting it just to try and, I'm assuming, bait Bobby to go on in. And I would have jumped like 3-4 different times way before that. And I feel like the Fire Giant got down to 5 HP. And PK still didn't finish it because they were looking to bait a fight. Bobby held for all of that and turned that. Obey got the Fire Giant. That was wild to me. I think their success is going to come off of Bobby.
That's a good
I completely agree. Totally agree.
The biggest question mark for me, though, is E United. I think their change is really surprising, especially putting Snoopy in support. Like, Snoopy is a great ADC. And, of course, they needed a support to fill. And the big question mark was, well, who's it going to be? And they said, no, we don't need one. We need an ADC instead. We're going to pick up Guy J. And I don't think Guy J is a bad player, but he's got absolutely no SPL experience. So I think it's going to be, I am concerned for them in the fact that, they're going to have to really, compensate for that and, kind of take him under their wing and really, push him forward. And I think they've got the minds to do it. I think that, these are some guys that really like to grind the game, and, they're going to be able to really be able to, be the wing that Guy J is going to, rest under. But I think, it might come down to them performing poorly in the first couple of weeks, and once they get into the swing of things, they'll be doing a lot better.
As far as E United is concerned, I'm kind of drawing as well from the research I did for the videos on each team, but I'm super concerned about this. Even it was like season 3, Snoopy doesn't stick to a role. He's never specialized it, and it's hard to master a role if you do not just spend years on said role. Hurrywin, I think, is an amazing player, but he had his best performance when he had strong specialists for each role. Now you've got Snoopy on support. He's a great support, but is he going to be one of the greatest supports? I don't think so. And Guy J, I don't have much of any research on him at all.
All I've seen is the Guy J ranked games. So
I saw Panda Cat doing the on her fake out where he just kind of jumped in place, made Guy J jump as well, and then he died.
All right, thanks everyone for watching. We'll be here again at the same time next week on Thursday. That is 3 p.m. Eastern. Here at twitch.tv/APAM Productions. We hope to have guest analysts in the future with all your favorite pro players coming in for an interview. So if there's anybody in the scene that you want to be on the show, send me a DM at APAM2 or at APAM Productions on Twitter. and we'll try to do it as much as we can, as long as we can schedule it. Along with this, there are going to be extended cuts of my interview with Aurora and the discussion I had with these analysts posted to the APAM Productions YouTube page. So be on the lookout for those, and I hope to see you guys next week again.